Hey, Happy New Year to everyone. What a great time of year. Don't you just love Christmas, a time of light, of hope, of joy? And then it's followed up by New Year's so we can do some self-reflection and decide some changes we might consider in ourselves. In fact, did you notice, I don't know about you, but over the holidays we have lots of meals with families and with friends. And invariably someone gets around to complaining about this or that, and then someone will pipe in and say, someone ought to do something about that. And I'm thinking, well, that's you and me. In other words, we don't make decisions about what to do just telling others what to do. We decide that we're going to do it. And there's an old Greek proverb that says, a society grows great when old people plant trees, the likes of which they may never reside or repose under. And I thought to myself, isn't that what we do as Americans and as citizens? And I would say especially as scholars and families of John Adams Academy, because servant leadership is at the core of what we do. Now, today was a memorable day, and the reason it was is because former President Jimmy Carter was laid to rest. He's going back to Georgia. Beautiful state. Love that name. By the way, Georgia and Georgic comes from the idea of working the land and husbanding something. And that goes right along with the theme of what we're talking about today. Because what I want to talk to you about is maybe what he did and what he said and what we could learn from his life. Some have said, well, I don't know that he was the greatest leader, but man, was he a great human being. And the reason people say that is because he spent decades in humanitarian service for others. And I thought, that is the model of a servant leader. And so as I thought about this, I pulled out, problems never change. They stay the same. I pulled out one of his speeches he gave in July of 1979. It's known as the Malaise speech. And you're thinking, malaise, man, that sounds kind of gloomy. Well, it was at the time. OPEC had started a cartel, and our cost of gasoline overnight tripled, and in some cases quadrupled. And worse than that, there wasn't any of it available. And so suddenly lines grew and people got frustrated. And for the first time, when he put this speech on, here's what he said. He said, true problems of our nation are much deeper than gasoline lines or energy shortages, deeper even than inflation or recession. And I realize more than ever that as president, I need your help. So I decided to reach out and listen to the voices of America. I invited to meet with those of you at Camp David, business, labor, teachers, preachers, governors, mayors, and private citizens. And as he reached out to them, what he discovered was that there was a malaise happening in the world. Unfortunately, I wished he would have emphasized at the time his love of volunteerism, because that is what heals America and heals communities, heals homes. Let me give you another example of why this is the case. A recent author said this: the social fabric is tearing across this country, but everywhere it seems healers are rising up to repair their small piece of it. They're going into hollow places and creating community, building intimate relationships that change lives one by one. I just love that quote, because what it does is it again says, someone ought to do something about it. Well, yeah, and that's me and you. That's how the school got started. For years, Linda and I sat around our kitchen table and we said, someone ought to do something about education. And I thought to myself, well, that someone is you and I. And so the two of us together pooled our resources and our thoughts and our emotions and the people we'd met over the years and said, hey, we have this idea, and it came to fruition. John Adams is an example of volunteerism at its core. Now I want to switch that a little bit and ask you, when was the last time you volunteered at John Adams Academy? I know some of you volunteer all the time, but the majority may not volunteer as much. And this is a call for all of us to look at the new year and think about our volunteerism and what we're doing. As I thought about this, there was another quote that this author put out there and said that I just thought was so good. He said, contemporary America needs an imaginative burst of new charities, businesses, clubs, and schools capable of fixing social problems that vex us. We need original approaches and programs from existing institutions. We need fresh publishing, art, and historical research that stirs us and moves thinking beyond some very stale conventional wisdom. We're trying to move beyond the stale conventional wisdom, and schools was where we thought we could put our excellence to work. Now, when I thought about this, I thought of this idea of volunteerism again, because I thought to myself, who should do this, and what is the requirement? And one thing I would say is volunteerism is not a requirement, but it is something that can be taken from us. Think about that. If you don't volunteer, someone will do something for you. And eventually, we become slothful. And we forget about what got us here. What got us here was people that would take initiative, that would see something wrong and do something about it. And thus, John Adams Academy was born. And as part of that, we ask each of you to give 40 hours of service per year. If you look at it, we're in school somewhere around 40 weeks. So that's 1 hour per week. Or you could say maybe 12 and a half minutes per day. Is that too much to ask? I hope not. Now you may be thinking, well, how could I volunteer? There doesn't seem to be many things to do. Can I give you a couple of suggestions? Sometimes and frequently lately, I've seen some of our parent service organization people working diligently, but they don't have enough volunteers. They're serving lunches and meals to our teachers, or they're getting out and helping scholars, or they're helping with safety, or they're helping in sports programs, they're helping with field trips and cleanup and the drop-off and pickup. There's just so many ways you can get involved, and probably most importantly, in your child's own classroom. Reach out to the teacher. They're busy, but reach out and let them know you're available to help them. When we make a promise and a commitment of volunteerism, if we don't keep that commitment, what ends up happening? I mentioned it leaves us or we lose it. That means that we may have the government or someone else fill that void. And when they fill that void with a paid position instead of a volunteer, we all lose, because we lose the ability to do something that needs to be done and receive the gratitude for that. There's an emotional response that comes with that feeds our souls and who we are when we volunteer. I wanted to mention a couple other things about volunteerism. It also teaches us not to be consumers of government, but to be self-governed. Think about that. Are we going to be consumers of government and of programs, or are we going to take the path of self-governance where we provide the opportunities and fill those with volunteerism? Volunteerism is safe when we make it a difficult decision to defer our gratification, and we refuse dependence. Volunteerism allows us to be contributors. And this, we give more than we take. Someone says, how do I know when I'm successful? You give more than you take. Think about that. That is why this academy exists. There's enough of us that want to give more than we take. If you are a net taker, I'm inviting you to be a net giver. If you are a net giver, give more. It will heal our society, our homes, our community, our country. Jimmy Carter, I'm going to go back to him. He did so much in his post-presidential career. For 40 years, he served without any remuneration to just build. He wasn't building a legacy. He didn't go around raising money for himself or his foundation. He went out about doing good. And that's what I'm inviting us to do. We need more people like that. And that's what this academy is about. So when you hear this, hey, someone ought to do something about this, will you be the one to say, that's me?